removing the funding gatekeepers, or what I call innovation gatekeepers. Innovation gatekeepers are those that basically sit on their thrones and decide which innovations get funded and which don't. And basically, they've been doing this for 5,000 years because that's the paradigm. And what I've spent the last 2 years doing is developing a new paradigm that removes them. And that paradigm is called the open startup, a ubiquitous startup ecosystem, one where anyone who has a validated idea can succeed. And it includes free crowdfunding, free corporate services. You don't have to worry about paying for corporate, setting up a corporation. You don't have to worry about paying for legal services or accounting services. Just like when you buy a PC, you don't have to pay for the hard drive, or you just don't have to pay for the, for the monitor.
You missed that all, Sam.
No, we're gonna go stop at a different one, Tommy. Near. We don't have time now. So ultimately, a ubiquitous platform is one where you have everything. We're not. How long? It'll be a little time. So ubiquitous ecosystem is one where it includes crowdfunding. It includes team building. It includes development services. Everything from forming the corporation to setting up the bylaws. All of that stuff is ubiquitous. It's simple. So a 16-year-old or an 80-year-old can do it. I have this idea. It's called pop-up text. It is a pop-up version of karaoke, and it's going to teach everyone to read by imprinting. That's my idea. Wow, I like that idea, right? I've had that idea now for 5 years. Pop-up text. I own the domain, popuptext.com. And I have, there are individuals out there, innovators, who basically are full of ideas. I'm full of ideas. I have ideas every day. And but there is no paradigm for us innovators, and we make up less than 2.5% of the population. That's the law of diffusion of innovation. It says that, right? That's the law. But there isn't any sandbox. So after 16 years as a serial innovator, I'm using that term now instead of a serial entrepreneur, because I define an entrepreneur now as someone who actually has either raised 2 million or has done a business that's generated 2 million in revenue, and I haven't. Okay, never been able to get that far, and plenty of lessons learned. And if I had have gotten that far, I wouldn't be doing this talk today, because I'd be a serial entrepreneur launching one startup after another startup after another startup, and you're like, wow, Michael Trout's this billionaire. That's amazing, right? Because I'd be using money from one to launch the next, to launch the next, to launch the next. But fortunate for you, I have not had that opportunity. So ultimately, what that has done, it has finally got me so damn frustrated that I decided to tackle and focus on the one thing that needs to be disruptive, and that is the startup. And to basically turn it into look at what's wrong with it, pull it apart, define it, and then reassemble it and transform it into something that we all can do. An open startup. It's that simple. It's going to seem simple now because I've done all the work, but you got to imagine that this was 2 years of my time, of exploring, of lessons learned, of struggling. How do you manage global teams? Right? How do you mock up and build up your concept without paying for a developer or designer to do it? All these different things. How can I make crowdfunding succeed so not 95% fail, but 95% succeed? Could we have, something as simple as a PowerPoint, formats like Slide Rocket that actually exports the product into HTML? So I don't even need a developer. And can we have that tie into an existing back end, the back frame, so we don't even need to worry about database and everything else because it's all done for you? Can we make launching startup ideas, web ideas, as simple as that? Sure we can. The PC back, you know, in the early 1980s was seen as a, you know, as an impossible thing, right? Are you eating it? My son's eating it. They're my two boys. My two. I'm doing all this innovation for them. And it feels so good to come out of the closet and say, hey, this is what I've been doing. Here it is. Let me show you. You can follow the development of it, right? As I develop and work on the soft proto. Wipe your hands with a tissue. It's on the chair between Mikey. So ultimately, it now rests on the open source community, and I will describe it. I will detail it. I'll show you how it works. I'll show it all comes together. It's up to you to build it. You want more, my hungry boy. If we can build it, we can change the world. Right. If we don't build it, then ultimately we potentially risk everything. Because if Dennis Meadows' scientific modeling on supercomputers in 1970 that predicted the end of growth, or what he called in his book, The Limits to Growth, is correct. It's correct. And so far, his models have been speeding up, not slowing down, because his original, his original models predicted 2050, 2080, which is what I was, funny enough, this is what I was thinking would be the time, right? The new models show 2010 to 2050, and it's not going to be 2050. It's going to be closer. I'm guessing 2015 to 2020. That's what I'm guessing. All right, because you have a worm in your stomach. It's eating all your food. You have a worm. So ultimately, it's off my shoulders. And we can bring about a new paradigm for launching startups called the Open Startup. It was released as basically open source, put the IP in the public domain on the Creative Commons in 2012. So 2012, in a way, I believe, is the year that defines the beginning of the Open Startup. Tamaki, what are you doing? Leave your brother. If your brother doesn't want to play, you don't mess with him.
It's soft.
What? Okay. Well, don't mess with him. You wanted the grain of rice. All right. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited because I think that, you know, I've known we need to open source this and put it out there, but that side of me is like, oh, you're giving away all your IP, aren't you a fool? You know, you've worked 2 years on this, how can you do this? Doesn't matter if there's no world, right? Doesn't matter if there's no future for my kids. I can't take money with me. You can't take all this money that you're holding with you, guys. Money is really nothing. And it is this invented thing. The real currency for humanity is the world we live in. The real currency is the ecosystem and the diversity of life that we have. I'm in a good mood. So is these guys. I mean, we exist for one purpose only, to have offspring. That's it. That's why we exist. Biologically, philosophically, Metaphysically, why we exist? We exist because we're the consciousness of the universe awakening to itself. That's why we exist. My name is Michael Trout. Let me focus on my driving. We're at a red light here. And thanks for watching.